When talking about the past, how can you learn to abstract experiences and look past the specifics? Are there any resources you recommend for learning how to tell stories so that you're not bogged down in the details of history? Sorry if that's really vague. I'm trying to keep it abstract. I've seen this question a couple times because you asked it a while ago, and I've thought about it a lot. And it's a tough one for me to answer. So I'm going to give you my best shot at it. One of the things that I want to acknowledge up front, I don't feel like I'm great at this off the cuff. So if I just pull a story out of a hat based on a conversation that's ongoing, I often feel like I don't get the right balance of detail to not detail to summarization in order to get the lesson across. And my tendency is to have too much detail. I am better at this when it's premeditated, when I'm pulling an example for a talk I'm giving or a course that I'm creating or a LinkedIn post I'm writing, and it's like there's a story, and I know what the point is, and it's easier for me to think ahead and go through, this is what I'm trying to communicate, so here are the relevant bits, and here's what I can summarize and sort of rapidly move through. And there's honestly, there's two different approaches that work with two different people. So I'll give you a model that I learned about, and this is, there's only two types of people in the world: those that divide the world into two types of people and those that don't. But this was one where Frances Fry, she's a professor at Harvard, and she did a talk at somewhere I was working, and one of the things that she talked about was this idea of how we communicate stories and points of stories. And there are, let's just simplify the world down to those two types of people. There are the people that she called they're the, oh dang it, wrong thing. They're the right side up triangle. And what they do is they start with the point. So they're going to start here, and then they're going to slowly expand out with all the detail. And this is, you start with where you're trying to go, you start with the end in mind, and then you add detail around that to sort of validate the point. This is a way that people communicate, and some people really prefer this way. I am the other way. I am an upside down triangle person, where I like to start with detail and context, and the point comes at the end. So I start somewhere up here, and then I work my way all over the place, and then eventually I get to okay, here's the point. The reason this model was helpful for me is that if I can imagine that there's people like this in the world, I recognize that they are incredibly frustrated by the way I communicate. And it's also why when someone communicates like this, I don't like it, because I'm like, I don't have context, I don't have detail. Someone who does communicate like this, when I start starting with my detailed context, they're like, why are you wasting my time? What are you trying to say? And I'm like, don't rush me to the point. I got to give you all the background information so that you know by the time I get to the point that it's valid. So here's a simple model. That's a simple model to think through stories. Do you default into the detail context first and then eventually get to the point? Or do you start with a point and go to detail? Now think about who the other person is. People tend to like receiving stories in the same way that they talk about, the same way that they describe their stories. So if you're talking to somebody who tends to go detail context first and eventually get to a point, if you start with point and then go to detail, they're jarred and they're suspicious, and it's going to take you a long time to recover. And so you can actually shift your approach. And I've had this happen to me because I am so detail context first, then get to the point. But when I know I'm talking to somebody who needs me to get to the point first, I pause and I go, what is the point I'm trying to make? Let me start there, and then I can add detail, because they're going to ask me a ton of hard questions because I haven't given them the detail and context, but I can now add it after, and they'll be okay with that, and I need to be okay with that too. So I don't know if this is exactly answering your question of how you can learn from abstract experiences and look past the specifics, or learning how to tell stories. That's maybe a hint on how to tell stories so that you're not bogged down in the details. The problem is some of the details matter. and it's just about selecting which ones. So again, if it's off the cuff, I think it's just something to practice and get better at over time. I feel like I've gotten better at it. I still don't feel like I'm great at it. Um, but yeah, and then in the first part, how can you learn to abstract experiences and look past the specifics? This takes time, in my opinion, and it takes time and it takes conversation with other people. Don't get caught in your own head around what are the lessons to abstract. Be talking to other people about what has been experienced, because they're going to tell you a different experience than you had, because even though you both went through the same thing, you have different lenses on it. And so you're going to start seeing, well, what are the shared things? What are the different things as I talk to a set of different people around the specifics of what just happened? And what does that mean I can abstract? Because different people took very different lessons from the same set of events. The other thing I would say is start with a base set of abstracted values and principles that you think is how you want to be, and then see how well that lines up over time with specifics. And I'll give you an example of this. When I was in the military, there was a very strong separation between leaders and their soldiers. You were to be respected, not liked. There was like a harsh line that officers don't fraternize with the enlisted and vice versa. And I took that with me into game development, and it was this important principle to me. Like, yep, it's important to be respected. It's not important to be liked. What I found over time is that while there's a truth in that, actually I almost made it so that like it wasn't okay to be liked. I almost had to be not liked, and that was too far. And I found that actually if I could still be a human, still be like a coworker, a good coworker to someone, and know a little bit about them and let them know a little bit about me, and be a little bit more open and transparent, and not view us as an us and them, but actually view us as a together. I didn't have to be their best buddy or friend. Just being friendly, it was okay to be liked. I still think it's more important to be respected. And so I had this abstract idea, and then over a set of specific experiences in game development, I learned that actually, no, it's okay for me to bend this one. My principle is too harsh, let me adjust it. Because what you want is the specific scenarios that you encounter to constantly be informing the abstracted principles and values you have, and vice versa, right? Like so both of these feed each other. You're looking for your ideal, and simultaneously you're letting reality determine what is the best ideal over time. And so sometimes you're going to run into a set of specific circumstances and go, wait a minute, this is out of line with my values and principles, the abstract things that I hold to be good, and I need to try to resolve that. And sometimes you're going to run into a situation where those principles and values are challenged because they actually aren't as effective or useful or good as you thought they were. So again, you've left this abstract, so I'm giving you a pretty abstract answer. But when it comes to like learning to abstract experiences and look past the specifics, I think it's about reps, picking up the patterns, and then having something to compare it to. Have an idea of what good looks like in your own mind. So now you're comparing it to that, and then you're going, well, wait a minute, I thought that looked really good, but it actually worked out terribly. Is that because my abstracted ideal of good is wrong, or because there's other stuff going on here that I don't understand? And also don't lose the specifics, because they are the things that are going to help you teach others in the future to be better leaders and things like that. I'm always frustrated when somebody seems to be really intuitively gifted but can't actually explain anything about what they're doing, because it's dangerous, because basically they're relying on their gut all the time and they can't rationalize it. And at some point that is going to fail them and they're going to get in trouble. So I want people thinking about and like pulling from the specifics to the abstract as much as they can. The other thing I would do too is similar to the folks that I talked to about like mentors, reading, stuff like that. Go read books about other people who have been through leadership challenges. What are their abstractions from what they've experienced over time? See if you can pull from people who have done the reps in leadership before you, to again inform your abstracted models. Humans are we're too good at pattern recognition, but it is a helpful thing, and you're trying to develop good judgment because that's what leaders need. Producers are leaders, so there you go. Hope that's helpful. Gives you something to work with.